For those who are unfamiliar, this is a guy named Tim Pool. Now, he had Kanye West on his show the other day, who spouted off all kinds of pro-Hitler, pro-Nazi, anti-Jewish stuff on there. And oh my God, it was crazy. Kanye West walked right off his show. I actually covered this event on this channel not too long ago. So if you want to see like my whole breakdown of his podcast and everything, you can watch that on here. But after the Tim Pool show, Kanye West goes on Alex Jones, spouts off the same pro-Hitler stuff. But just about every far-right, talking head is talking about this. Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, this guy right here, and a bunch of others. They're all talking about what happened. Well, Steven Crowder, another one of these far-right conservative people, actually did an interview with Alex Jones after Kanye West went on his show. So what we're about to watch here is Tim Pool talking about Alex Jones's breakdown of his appearance with Kanye West. So let's give it a listen and see what they have to say for themselves, shall we? Because it's bound to be fascinating. And while we listen to this, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild.
Let's do a hard segue into this story with Alex Jones. We had this from timcast.com. Quote, "Burn in hell, Hitler." Alex Jones comments on Ye interview. Quote, "I felt like I was sucked into a giant publicity stunt," said the InfoWars host. So everybody remembers what happened when Ye went on Alex Jones. He also went on with Gavin McInnes. And I guess what Alex was saying is that before the show, they agreed not to talk about that stuff. Then when the show went on the air, that's all they talked about. And
that's not what Alex Jones said. Like I said, Alex Jones went on Steven Crowder's show, a far-right nutcases, gigantic platform. He went on that to talk about the Alex Jones, or to talk about the Kanye West interview that he did, right? And when he was there, he did say he felt like he was sucked into a publicity stunt. He didn't say that he regretted having him on or any of that stuff.
And he feels like it was a big publicity stunt.
I think Alex, his comments were pretty interesting. He said that Kanye had a 5th grade level understanding of Hitler. He also challenged.
He did say that. He said he felt like he had no idea who Hitler was or what he believed or anything at all. And, I think I kind of tend to agree with that. I don't think he knows anything about it. That doesn't excuse Kanye West's behavior or beliefs or feelings about the Nazis or whatever. He knows that Nazis are like the root of all evil. Like everybody should know that by the time they reach 5th grade. But I do think I agree. I don't think the guy knows anything about the Nazis. Nothing.
Challenged Nick Fuentes to a debate about history and specifically World War II. There was also a reference to him potentially being a homosexual. So Alex kind of went off a little bit here. I don't know if he felt pressure, but we got to understand.
Okay, I don't know that this being gay thing. I didn't hear anything implying that Alex believes that Kanye was gay. I have heard other people accuse Kanye West of being gay, like Milo Yiannopoulos, one of his hype men or whatever, secretly claimed that he was gay. It was revealed in text messages. He believes that Kanye is gay, but who knows if that's true.
And Alex was the man that has been talking about Prescott Bush. He's been talking about Margaret Sanger. He's been talking about a lot of American elites financing this larger eugenics, depopulation, Nazi World War II kind of movement. This was kind of his moment to kind of bring it back. Some people are saying he should have brought it back when Ye was on and pushed back a little bit more, but that's up to people's own interpretations of how they saw the interview. I don't know. What did you think of that interview? And what do you think about his latest comments now talking about 5th grade level understanding of World War II?
I think that the interview that Alex did with Ye was really important because it highlighted why the First Amendment is important. And
No. I don't really have a problem with them interviewing Kanye West. Whatever, I guess. It's fine if you really want to. As long as you push back against it, I'm okay with it. But if it were up to me, I would say don't give him the platform. I'm not going to tear you down and scream at you for doing it. Okay, you did it, I guess, whatever. But you probably shouldn't have. I wouldn't have.
the sense of the reason why I'm a free speech absolutist is because I think that you should allow your enemy or just anybody in society, right, to really say what they think about certain issues. I think that free speech is so effective because it essentially allows people to expose themselves, to expose what they really think, to expose, and allows the public as well to decide if their views are good or bad. So I think, Ye going on with Alex not really pushing back was a good way for the public to really, I guess, delve into what Kanye actually thought about.
I don't know. I feel like Alex did push back a little bit. Well, he didn't really push back much. He gave him a bunch of opportunities, like softballs right down the center of the plate, to get out of the situation he just dug for himself. Like, he kept saying, well, can we just say that you like the design of the uniforms and that's about it? You don't actually like the Nazis? I mean, he said this multiple times, and Kanye kept saying, no, I like the Nazis. I'm a huge fan. I love them. So I don't know how else to interpret that, you know. So he most definitely pushed back a little bit. He also said, I don't like Hitler. I think he was evil. He could have pushed back a lot more than he did, but I think he was probably afraid of, like, scaring him away. I don't know. Yeah. And as Anubian the 13 says, freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. It means freedom to not be jailed for the things that you say. That's what it actually means. You are perfectly free to say whatever you want, but you can expect for me to use my free speech and not support you in the future. That's me using my free speech.
Issue regarding what Alex is saying now, I do think that Kanye is being used by the people that are around him. I'll be honest with it. Tim, you disagree with me on this?
Look,
I completely disagree. I think Kanye looked for these people. I think he sought them out. That's what I was looking for. Kanye sought these people out. He looked for opportunities to spread Nazi ideology, and he looked for people who would agree with him on this Nazi ideology, and he found them. He found them in Nick Fuentes, Milo, and others, and they decided to spread the ideology along with him. It's not like he came across this guy, oh, hey, check it out, a guy named Nick Fuentes. Never heard of this guy before, completely unrelated to anything I've ever had an interest in. And it just so happens that this Nick Fuentes guy that he just met out of the blue, just so happens he's a Nazi. What are the chances? No. He found him because he was in favor of Nazi ideology.
when we hear that Alex is saying that they agreed to talk about this stuff, about Hitler and all that, and then they did anyway, and he felt like it was a publicity stunt, that's exactly what I was saying it felt like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the whole thing was planned out. So a couple points, maybe it's being a dead horse, but
I don't feel like they agreed not to talk about it. I feel like Alex Jones specifically said in that Steven Crowder thing that we covered the other day, I feel like he specifically said, we will talk about anything that you want. I'm hoping to talk about other issues that I view as important also. I'm pretty sure that's what was said on Steven Crowder's show.
Ye went on with Gavin McInnes. We'll talk about that. But a couple points, like they initially asked us for a return flight right after the show. We couldn't do it. It was not that we were told by we couldn't get a flight. It wasn't possible. They ended up getting a private plane ready to go right afterwards. They also said, we'll talk about the campaign, the plans, and then immediately jumped into this stuff. Same thing to do with Alex Jones. So the other thing too is when I look at what happened with Gavin McInnes, Ye is just saying the craziest possible things. He's doing it again. I want to give a shout out to Viva Frey and Robert Barnes, because Barnes made a really, really great point. Something that we missed, obviously. And it's that Ye's talking about this tax liability that he's got. $50 million or whatever, and they're trying to put him in jail. And he was saying that we didn't notice and we should have pressed on it. He's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I pointed this out in the original interview. Kanye West brought up that he owes $50 million in taxes, and they told him this morning, and they were trying to put him in jail for it. I had no idea why Tim Pool was not, hammering down on this and talking about it, heavily. Because this is a pretty serious admission. It's the little things that Kanye West brings up that you don't really expect or you don't think anything of, but are actually a really big deal and that should be focused in on more.
Maybe Ye is trying to appear crazy so he doesn't go to prison.
Oh, bullshit. That's just ridiculous, it seems to me. Everybody knows that Kanye West is crazy, first of all. And second, being crazy does not save you from prison. I don't know who told Tim Pool that you don't have to go to prison if you're crazy, but he's obviously never met an inmate in his life.
That he can come off as mentally unwell. He didn't intentionally. What did Barnes say? The example he gave was that Ye is going to come out with the defense that the reason he didn't pay taxes, he was scared that it was going to go to the Jewish people or something like that. He'll make up an excuse so it sounds like he's unhinged, and then he gets a slap.
That's ridiculous. They're trying to give him every out possible, find every excuse to make it seem like Kanye West is not crazy, when the bottom line is he's crazy. He needs medicine desperately. This is 100% Kanye's fault. If he just took medicine, his life would be a lot better. Things would be a lot better. And also, his hatred of Nazis is not a result of not taking medicine. His hatred of Jewish people and his love of Nazis is not a result of his mental illness. That's what I meant to say.
slap on the wrist minimum security thing instead of like a serious 25-year tax evasion thing.
That's ridiculous.
So Ye goes on with Gavin McInnes, and he says, what did he do? He called for Jewish people to forgive Hitler. It's just really, really out there, is putting it lightly. I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts. And in it, this is amazing. Gavin McInnes is like, when you meet someone, you judge them like by the individual, right? And he's like, I don't. Ye just outright says it. There's no way, okay? Like...
Yeah, so Gavin McInnes, there's a little bit more to this. Gavin McInnes, by the way, if you don't know who he is, he was the founder of the Proud Boys. He eventually handed the role off to a guy named Enrique Tarrio, who is currently in jail, I think, for some of the shit that he did, you know, on or around January 6th, but that's neither here nor there. So Gavin McInnes apparently had like an interview with Kanye West and tried to talk him out of anti-Semitism. Interestingly enough, Gavin McInnes, of all people, dude is absolutely terrible in every way. But he says anti-Semitism is like a dead end because you start blaming Jews every time you stub your toe, basically. It's an intellectual dead end. It doesn't lead to anything fruitful. That was the point that McInnes was making before meeting with Kanye. And so he says... Kanye, look, every time black people are overrepresented in like crime statistics, but every time I meet a black person, I start with a clean slate. I give them a fair chance to just be who they are, and I don't make any assumptions about like them being bad or whatever. Now, does Gavin McInnes actually do that? I doubt it. I don't think so. But he was making a point that that's how you're supposed to view things. To a black guy. It was a really good point. He was trying to make this a personal issue for Kanye. He did a really good job with that one specific question, if none other. And so he says, Kanye, is that what you do for Jews? Do you assume that, you know, do you look at them overrepresented in this area or that area? But when you deal with individual Jews, do you see them as fine people, start with a blank slate? And Kanye says, nope. This dude is as depraved as they come. Seriously. It's just fucking disgusting how Kanye West views Jews, and there is no excuse for it. None.
Here's my issue. I think Barnes may be right about him trying not to go to jail for tax evasion or whatever the issue is. But like, it seems like Kanye is pretending to be crazy poorly. You know?
Ridiculous. He's saying he's way over the top. It's kind of not really believable how crazy he is because he's overplaying it. Totally disagree. This, you know what this tells me? The fact that Tim Pool is saying this, it tells me that he's never seen that clip from 2006 where Kanye says George Bush hates black people. You can clearly see all the way back in 2006 that Kanye was disconnected from reality. He was not with it mentally, even then. They're doing a charity event for victims of Hurricane Katrina. Mike Myers and Kanye and Chris Tucker and others were doing this. And Kanye comes on to talk about how he feels about Hurricane Katrina.
With the breach of 3 levees protecting New Orleans, the landscape of the city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
They portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food, and you know it's been 5 days because most of the people are black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, and just to imagine if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help.
So Kanye is absolutely correct about everything that he's saying right now, everything that you can decipher. But it's complete nonsense. All of it. It's total nonsense. It's nearly impossible to understand. The guy has always been crazy. Always.
The poor, the black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, this is Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call...
Yeah. So the point is, it wasn't what he said. It was the way he said it back then. It was complete nonsense, beginning to end, all of it. Kanye West has always been confusing and unhinged from reality completely. This is not an act. It wasn't an act in 2006. It's not an act now.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe not. Maybe because people believe it. They're like, how could he say such things? Like, well, he's just saying stupid, crazy, and outrageous
but
things.
he's always been crazy and outrageous. That's why.
Absolutely.
But for me, I feel like it's him being used by the people around him to push a specific message or narrative, whether or not he agrees.
No, Kanye is using the people around him to push a specific message or narrative. Kanye is using Nick Fuentes to push this message that he believes, that Jews are evil and they run the world and blah, blah, blah. Kanye is using people, not the other way around.
With that, I don't know. I've been a Kanye West fan for a long time. I also have not met him. And
I've actually been a Kanye fan, too, for a long time, although I've been a bigger Eminem fan. I'm a huge Eminem fan. Love that dude.
Person like you guys have, so I feel like my commentary is based on what I'm seeing in the headlines. You guys have more of a background
He
to
was
it.
totally different before the cameras
Off
rolled.
camera.
Totally different. And I kind of wish we kind of filmed a little bit just to give people a perspective because everything was very cordial, very, understanding. A lot of the craziness and nonsense wasn't there. And then the cameras went on and it was like a different person was sitting there, a different vibe, a different energy. And everything just changed in the room.
See, I think he got just like MK Ultra'd by Hollywood, so.
But this is the thing.
Give me a break, dude.
Everything we're hearing, like the things he said on Alex Jones, the thing he said on Gavin McInnes, the things he said here is only what people saw publicly. Right. That's why I thought the behind the scenes things with him that we did was so important, because for whatever reason, you watch that video and he's just like, yeah, he's very, very calm, very chill. He's like walking up to Luke and he's like, we got to figure out how to get better food in this house. He looks at me, he's like, we should put him in charge of getting the food. That'd be really great. Yeah. Totally different. Camera goes on and he appears to lose it. It looks like a performance. He goes on Alex Jones wearing a Balenciaga gimp mask, and then he's got a net and he's going, hey Kanye, you'll be meeting with them. We're gonna take your kids. And it's you're looking at this like, is this guy out of his mind? Yeah. But you see him off camera before the show and he's having an intelligent, normal conversation with you. Right. As soon as the camera turns on, come on, man. Alex Jones is right. Put some money in the jar. Whoever's here, go down to where Alex Jones is right jar, put money in. He said he felt like he was in one big publicity stunt. I think he's right.
Yeah. But at the same time,
well, maybe he's in a big publicity stunt, but Kanye is not crazy. Well, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. But Kanye has always been crazy. This Kanye being crazy thing is an act. That's ridiculous. No, Kanye's always been a nutter butter since day one.
In a court of law, being allegedly anti-Semitic isn't an excuse for an insanity, though. Insanity.
Well, what Barnes was
there you go, exactly right.
saying is that Kanye will come out and say he didn't pay taxes because it's going to go to all the Jewish people who control everything. That would be his weird, crazy excuse or something.
It'll be interesting to look at the.
People think that putting in an insanity plea gets you in a better position in the legal system. If you believe that, you know nothing about the legal system. If you successfully plead insanity, if people actually believe you when you claim that you're insane, you don't get a better outcome. You don't get to just go free. They're like, oh, you're crazy. Okay, well, just go back into society then. That's not how it works. When you successfully convince the court that you're crazy, they basically, so if you if you fail to convince the court that you're crazy, you have to serve your time in a prison. They sentence you to 20 years or whatever for whatever it is. I don't know what Kanye was accused of or what the sentence on it would be. Just let's hypothetically say it's 5 years in prison, right? For tax evasion, $50 million tax evasion, right? If he successfully convinces the court that he's crazy, there is no limit on the amount of time that he will spend in an insane asylum. They will tell him he has to go to this insane asylum until the doctors feel that he's better, that he's safe to be in society again. That's actually what'll happen. So he most definitely does not want that. Trust me. Nobody wants that. Insane asylums are not fun either. They're not better than jails. I would venture as far as to say they're worse than jails in many ways. Trust me, this is not what Tim Pool thinks it is.
What was it, Wesley Snipes?
I think that
was the example that he referenced. It would be interesting to look at that particular case and see exactly what happened there, just to get a reference of how that previously played out to how what might be the strategy here. But who knows at the end of the day? What do you think, Ian?
Well, I'm glad
This is completely ridiculous. If Kanye is actually trying to pretend that he's crazy to get a lower sentence, then he's dumb as dog shit. and knows absolutely nothing about the legal system.
More of an empath and intuitive person.
I was thinking about this as like for the long term, like where is this along the path of humanity when we look back in 1,000 years? Like what was happening right now? And what will they remember it happening? I think what's happening is, crazy as it is Kanye's waking up a bunch of Jewish people and pointing them to God. Like last night on that Gavin McInnes interview, I'll explain it. Gavin was like, I don't
know about that one, Ian.
Yeah, Gavin's like, because Nick was saying, oh, there's a cabal, or they were saying there's a cabal of people that are preventing Kanye from,
By the way, if you're unfamiliar with the term cabal, it basically means like a group of people at the top that are trying to pull strings like puppet masters and blah, blah, blah. It's all, just all these conspiracies have, so the deep state, they all have some kind of an elite group at the top that's trying to control everything. But what's interesting about the word cabal specifically is the fact that the root of the word cabal is Kabbalah. That's its origin, its etymology, if you will. Kabbalah is like an ancient mystical Jewish tradition of whatever. So I find it particularly fascinating that they're using the word cabal here. But anyway.
Getting to another echelon of wealth or whatever, there's a cabal, and Kanye's like, it's the Jewish people. And Gavin was like, I don't think they're Jewish. If you don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. And it's something I said last week too. So Gavin, if you're listening, hell yeah, dude, nice one. And it's true. And
No. That's
Gavin McInnes is actually really interesting in the arguments that he presented in that interview. I've only seen like bits and pieces of the interview. It's like 5 hours long, and it was behind a paywall. And I don't want to give that sick monster my $10. So I decided not to purchase the McInnes interview because that guy is just evil. But yeah,
that's not true.
Let me finish, please.
I understand, but I want to like, if you make a point, just explain. If you make like 12 points in a row, we can't address all of them. It's called the Gish Gallop. So if you said a few things right now that I think need to be addressed. One,
Tim's correct on this point.
You can be ethnically Jewish and not religious.
Yeah, well, I think you need a different word for that.
Okay, well, that's an important thing to make to
It's like saying the word means two different things. It's nonsense. The word means something. What does the word mean? What does Jewish mean?
Okay,
let's define it and move on. You don't give me two definitions.
You can say religiously or you can say ethnically then, right?
Well, I'm just talking about the word. What does the word mean? Let's be specific. The word means that you're Jewish, meaning what? That you're a Jew, meaning what?
You have to be more specific is the point. It's a broad term. Get more specific. This guy is really annoying and ridiculous. You have to get specific with it.
Do you believe in God? That's the tenet of Judaism. That's like the tenet.
I'm pretty sure we have people here who are ethnically Jewish.
Their parents were. Like if your great-great-grandparents were Jewish, then that doesn't mean that you are. You got to believe in it. It's a process.
He doesn't know what he's talking about at all. He has no idea, and he's saying these things so confidently.
It's like an understanding. My thoughts are that what's going to happen is people are realizing, like, if you're a fallen Jew, if you've like no longer believe in this and you're just this atheist taking advantage of people, you're going to realize that God is great. That it's there for all of us. So we're all in this together. And I think that what's happening is there's going to be a revelation within Judaism and probably all the major religions on earth, that there's going to be some sort of a transformation where people come back to the faith. And Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
A reformation.
Yeah.
I just have to say.
Okay, that's an interesting point that he made. Ridiculous on so many levels. No reason to believe it. But it does bring us to an interesting conclusion. There are Hasidic communities out there. I mean, Jewish extremists that are completely isolated from the rest of the world, particularly in New York City. There are a bunch of Hasidic communities here. Check this out. New York City is so Jewish that every hospital in New York City, every elevator in every hospital in New York City stops at every floor on Sundays. Because pushing a button would be using electricity on the Sabbath, and you're not supposed to light a fire, and there's a bunch of complicated religious meaning behind all of that. New York City is very, very Jewish. And like I said, there are lots of Hasidic communities around here that are beyond just very, very Jewish, and they're cult compounds practically. Very extreme. And those people hate secular Jews. They don't like them at all. They don't view them as brothers. They don't want to work with them or deal with them or whatever. It's just a straight up weird Jewish cult that exists. So yeah, they do refer to them as like fallen Jews and say all kinds of negative things about them. So there is something interesting to that.
How?
Ian?
Because he returned them to God.
I think this may be one of the most insane things I've ever heard you say.
Sure, man. I'm talking about what people... People, they're often told they're crazy when they're talking about stuff like
Let me
this
just clarify a few things. Kanye West said he said Jewish people aren't allowed to be in control of things. He said the only way he would allow them to work for them if he could put cameras in their houses and spy on them.
He did. He said that. Kanye West said he was asked, would you allow or would you work with a Jewish person? And his response to that was, if I could go through their phone and put cameras in their living room and watch them 24/7 to make sure that they're not working with the cabal, then yes.
And you think that's him saving them?
Well, I think Savannah's onto something that Nick has been tweaking his mind the last 2 weeks with a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff. Nick, when he was pressed, when Gavin told Nick, I don't think they're Jewish. I think if you don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. And Nick was like, okay, maybe these people aren't Jewish. Maybe it's godless people, atheists. Okay, maybe. But then immediately Nick switched to like, but Jesus Christ is the king and is the great God. And it's the same stuff Kanye's been splattering, like this deep Christian belief stuff. Like you got to get out of that and become like, so yeah, but I agree with you. Kanye has said some madly racist stuff in the last, see,
Wait, how is it racist? This guy's whole argument is that, like, Jews aren't Jewish unless they're religious, right? If it's a religion, then it's not a race thing. He's contradicting himself, and this is bizarre, and I have no idea what he's even talking about right now.
See, that's the thing. Is it race? It's not even a race. It's a religion. It's so confusing on purpose.
There you go. No, it's not confusing. You just have no idea how it works.
There's an ethnicity as well.
There is an ethnicity and a race. They're different.
It's the only religion.
I'm sorry. There is an ethnicity and a religion. They're different. That's what I meant to say. Ethnicity and a religion. They are different from each other.
On earth that
Do you
happens
want
to
to
have
tune
an
in here,
attached
Savannah? Savannah, you look
ethnicity.
like you want to say something.
This might get me canceled, but my legit.
He's saying this like so ridiculously. Oh, this is the only religion on earth that has an attached ethnicity. Yeah. Well, actually, it's not the only one on earth. There are others. It's not very common, but yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Legitimate question, I guess, for the entire movement, because you know what? I'm at the point where I do feel like the term anti-Semitism has been extremely overused.
I don't. How can you possibly say this in the context of a conversation where a guy keeps talking about how he loves Hitler and he hates Jews?
And I want to know your guys' viewpoint on, okay, can we legitimately criticize the Jewish community or people who are Jewish that are in power? Are we allowed to criticize that, or is that anti-Semitism? Because
No, you're totally allowed to criticize people in power. Absolutely. She just doesn't seem to understand the difference between criticizing a human being, just criticizing somebody, and racism. She doesn't understand the difference.
I think what this is linking to is that broader conversation. And I think a lot of people in the right wing do have that question. I would like your guys' viewpoints on it, because I think this is something that a lot of people question, but we don't really talk about.
I think if you just hate somebody, that's hatred. That's because of how they were born or how they look or their religion. That's wrong. But I think governments...
Discrimination, prejudice, making assumptions or generalizations about groups of people, that's racism. That is hatred and unjustified.
Should be criticized no matter what kind of government it is, including the Israeli government or Israel.
Absolutely. Governments should be allowed to be criticized, including the Israeli government. Yes. That's not racism.
Really individuals. So I think that's the distinction that I see myself.
Gavin McInnes made a point. He said, when you meet someone, they're a blank slate. You treat them as an individual. Mm-hmm. And so the issue with the Ye stuff is, he mentioned Jon Stewart. I mentioned Dave Chappelle. Mm-hmm. They both made a similar point. In Hollywood and media, there's a lot of Jewish people. Mm-hmm. The problem is Kanye explicitly stated in more than one interview, he lumps all of them together regardless of what that really means. Yeah. So like, I think the issue is, if you take a look at Harvard, Asian people are overrepresented in Harvard. It does not mean you go up to an Asian person and be like, this person must be good at math. It's you treat the individual like the individual. Me growing up in Chicago with my friends,
Okay, that was totally disconnected. He got his talking points confused there. He's right in saying that you don't go up to Asian people and assume that they're good at math, even though, Asian people statistically may have taken higher or in more advanced math classes or something like that.
He had some Asian friends who were as dumb as a box of rocks. Then, of course, you see the tropes about certain things. What I end up learning, I should say, in my view, the reason Asians may be overrepresented in Harvard is because the culture that they inherit, its cultural elements, are studiousness and punctuality, and it's like strictness and authoritativeness and authoritarian, like we see in the Chinese Communist Party.
He's actually correct on this. If nothing else, I have to say it's a good thing that there's a silver lining behind every bad situation, right? And Kanye West coming out of the woodwork as a raging Nazi, just straight up full-blown Nazi, has had fringe benefits. One of the fringe benefits is getting the far right, like Tim Pool, for example, getting them to use their brain for 5 minutes and figure out what racism is. Have these conversations to come to conclusions about what racism is. That's one of the benefits. That's really interesting that we found ourselves here.
So you look at people who come from that culture, they're going to have a very, very distinct and strict way of raising their kids. Those kids are more likely to exhibit certain behaviors, like they're going to be studious. If I were to come out and just be like, wow, that proves it. Asian people are all one way or another. It's just not correct. Yeah. So the issue is when people say...
he's got it. He's got it. Now apply that to the black community. Apply that line of thinking to the black community. See if we can get you just one step further.
The issue is Jewish people. It's the same thing as the left saying Asians should have a higher standard to get in college because they're Asian. And I'm like, no, none of that. A person comes up to me, I say, who are you? What do you want? What does this mean? I don't think Asians are conspiring to get into colleges. Asians are suing to keep people out of colleges. Well, there are people who are Asian who are suing Harvard, but it's because Harvard's making it hard on these individuals who may not have, I'll put it this way, poor working class Asian people being told they can't go to Harvard is to me completely insane. Completely insane. And I'm not going to blame all Asian people for filing lawsuits against Harvard because Harvard is concerned that more Asians means less Hispanics or black people.
Okay, I feel like he's talking about a specific case that I've never heard of before, so I can't really speak to this.
You know what? I think it's all white guys that are responsible for all of our wrongs, all of our ills. Everything wrong in this society is because of white guys. I say that as a proud person of color. And
okay, this is a terrible joke. If it is indeed a joke, I don't understand it, and probably not the best thing to bring up during a conversation on race, but that's neither here nor there.
Whenever we do this, I think it needs to be called out, especially when it comes to kind of generalizations. I think we should always try to be more specific. But again, if you have hatred for somebody, that's just because of the way they are. That's just wrong. That's just how I plainly see it.
See, and okay, so this is my legitimate...
Absolutely. Generalizations are wrong, period. I love it.
Questioning too. And for example, Kyrie Irving, Nike just dropped him, right? Because he shared a link to an allegedly anti-Semitic documentary. I've never seen the documentary myself, so maybe it is anti-Semitic, I'm not sure. But when people call that out and say, okay, why do we see this consistent pattern of people sharing something, the media immediately labeling it as anti-Semitism, this person getting canceled, this is a pattern that we have seen a time or two. Why is it that we're not allowed to speak about this? Again, this is just me questioning these things.
But we are speaking about it right now. The story about...
Right? Thank you. Oh my God, dude. Tim Pool, the voice of reason for once in his life. This dude is a hard right nutcase most of the time and claims to be a disaffected liberal. For once in this dude's life, he's actually speaking. He's the voice of reason. This is actually really surprising to me.
Kyrie Irving has been talked about a whole lot, and it's cancel culture, and we think it's wrong.
You know what's really funny about the fact that they're talking about cancel culture here? Cancel culture, originally, like the concept of cancel culture, came from this anti-Semitic document created by the Russian secret police in 1902 to 1905, roughly, called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The claim is that, God, I have the document, but I don't have it pulled up right now. Anyways, the claim is that the Jews are trying to, control society and what's acceptable by using cancel culture to blah, blah, blah. Even these conspiracies and dog whistles and stuff that they're using here are all anti-Semitic. It's all anti-Semitic nonsense. All of it. And they probably don't even realize that it has its roots in this document, this anti-Semitic document. They probably don't even know it. It's just crazy, dude.
Like Luke has the Kyrie Irving jersey that he puts up periodically. I think people should be entitled to free speech. They should be allowed. Like in 2018, when Twitter started banning people, alt-right individuals, I did an interview with insiders, Oliver Darcy, saying like, this is wrong. They shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
It's weird to me that people are acting like the issue with Kanye West and what he's saying about Jewish people is unique. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there's tons of instances where people have said something offensive and then gotten canceled over it, and we've argued that shouldn't be happening.
Right. Yeah. What happened to Kyrie is absolutely insane, and I think he had a big target on his back, especially with what happened within the last few years with him standing up for his personal freedom to choose not to be vaccinated. He was punished by a lot of people. The corporate media attacked him, and I think they're just looking for any reason just to try to get him out of the discourse, just to try to stop him as much as they can. And he literally...
Such a victim, right? Dude is filthy rich, Kyrie Irving. Has so much money to his name, has a massive platform, can say absolutely anything he wants, and he's the victim, right? Constantly. Like, these people have such a victim complex. If companies don't want to work with you because you say some Nazi shit, then they shouldn't be required to work with you. Get over yourselves.
Literally tweeted, I don't think it was even a link. I think it was a photo. I think it was a poster for a documentary. They also tried to get him in trouble for posting clips from Alex Jones.
Yeah.
So he's an individual that I routinely put, the jersey behind because I think he's unfairly punished. I think a lot of the stuff...
He's not unfairly punished. He wasn't punished at all. Freedom, he wasn't put in jail for what he said or any of that stuff. He's free to speak his mind, but he's not free from consequences for it if he really wants to.
That he's going through is absolutely ridiculous. He donated $500,000 to the ADL. He apologized for sharing a link without even giving it any, for sharing a photo of a documentary without even giving it any context. And they still decided to punish him and cancel it. That's over, and that's crazy. And I agree with you.
God, they have such a persecution complex, honestly. Like, they cannot get over themselves, can they? They have to be persecuted 24/7.
That's something that deserves pushback on. But when someone is hateful against someone else, they should be called out as well, right?
It's not unique to Jewish people. I'll give you a few examples. Netflix executive, who this is I think in 2018, was giving examples of hate speech, saying the slurs. So people in the meeting went to HR and complained.
Yeah,
they called him in and they said, "What did you say?"
Yeah, I have no idea what they're talking about, and I honestly don't trust a word out of their mouths by default because they twist things around and propagandize and lie about stuff on a regular basis. So, yeah, just don't trust anything without directly looking it up.
Saying, like I was explaining, these are words that shouldn't be used on Netflix specials. What words he said? And they went, oh, they fired him. You had the race car driver whose dad in the 80s used the N-word on the radio, so sponsors pulled out from him. He didn't even do anything. Yep. Cancel culture is insane.
Again, cancel culture is an anti-Semitic dog whistle that's existed for hundreds of years.
I think it's, and I get all of...
As if the right doesn't cancel people that they don't like. Like, seriously, people, think about this. What do you think would happen if Donald Trump came out as gay tomorrow? You think that the right would love him and respect his choice and continue to support him because they don't engage in cancel culture? Give me a fucking break. You've got to be high to believe such a thing. Absolutely ridiculous. The right cancels people more often than the left does, by far. But they use cancel culture as a bludgeon against people to try to get their way with things, despite the fact that they use it more often than the left does.
The woke, crazy leftist organizations writing articles about it because I said the Alex Jones interview with Ye was good because it shows us exactly what Ye believes. And immediately people were like, hey, man, I don't want to be associated. I don't like that. Those are bad ideas. I don't think we should shut down people's lives, take away their banks, destroy everything because they think things that I think are stupid or wrong. Right. I think we just speak up, we have conversations like this and explain why we think they're wrong.
I mean, look what happened to Salman Rushdie a couple weeks ago. I mean, that deserves to be discussed, I think, if we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff, when we're going to be talking about this conversation. Again, I think blanketly, it's just very easy to say, hey, you hate somebody because of the way that they're born, you're a jackass. And I think it's that simple. And I think at the end of the day, we should be going to that and not just using this as a way to divide and conquer people and use it as a way to control speech and to punish people for daring to express ideas. Because I think we also reached the stage in our society where comedy is being banned, where it's being vilified, where it's being stopped. Comedy used to bring people together. It used to make people laugh about our differences.
Comedy still makes people laugh about differences. People are not like canceling comedians like these people seem to believe. It's just, God, they live in a fantasy land 24/7.
We can't even have that anymore. We just have people afraid to even speak to each other. And that to me is an absolutely dangerous ingredient towards a society that is on the verge of collapsing.
Let me give you another example. Dave Chappelle and Jon Stewart both came out and made these statements that Kanye and I actually mentioned. Jon Stewart said something to the effect of, if you overuse the phrase anti-Semitic when someone points out there are a lot of Jewish people in Hollywood or in media or in finance, then this is what is breeding the conspiracies, basically. It's what's making people feel like their ideas may be correct. And if you want to have an honest conversation, you start with, yes, we do see in certain areas overrepresentation. That was Jon Stewart. Dave Chappelle made the joke where he said, if it's an Italian guy, it's the mob. If it's a black guy, it's a gang. And if it's a bunch of Jewish people, it's a coincidence. You're not allowed to talk about it. That was Dave Chappelle's joke. Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle's.
Yeah, that joke was not good, in my opinion. It was basically reinforcing the anti-Semitic bullshit that he believes, that all of them believe, that Kanye was espousing and everything else. Not helpful. But, I'm not willing to cancel Dave Chappelle for that. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't fantastic. I hope to see Dave Chappelle be better on that stuff. However, I do have a problem with what Dave Chappelle said about trans people not too long ago. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Chappelle held like this whole thing about the trans community and how he feels about them. And, afterward, it was very negative. And afterward, everyone was like, oh, they're just jokes. They're just jokes. Yeah, actually, I didn't have a problem with Chappelle's jokes on the trans community. I thought they were really funny. He had some really good material on, the LGBT community or being trans or whatever. Really, really funny stuff. The problem I had with Chappelle's stuff on the LGBT community is when he looked at the camera and said, I'm not joking. I am a TERF. I don't like trans people. I don't think that they should exist in society. Blah, 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 all that other stuff. He didn't use those exact words. It's not fair for me to quote him like that. But he most definitely said he was a TERF, and he agrees with J.K. Rowling on all of the bullshit that she's been going on about lately. So, yeah, that's my problem with Dave Chappelle. Nothing to do with cancel culture, nothing to do with, his questionable jokes or any of that stuff. It was when he stopped joking that I started having an issue with it.
Lives have not been destroyed. They've talked about it. They've addressed it. It's come up here. The thing about what Kanye said is, Kanye praised Hitler.
Yeah,
praised
okay,
Nazis.
Kanye's on a different level from
Kanye
everybody
said
else.
they're not allowed to control things, and he would only hire them if he can follow them home, put cameras in their house to prove they aren't spies. Okay, if you said that about any ethnic...
And by the way, I'm sorry, let me step back a few seconds. A TERF, if you're unfamiliar, it stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, and it's a very deeply anti-trans position. Like, it's basically people who hate the trans community. It's borderline a hate group, honestly, at this point. TERFs are absolutely terrible. And people who identify as TERFs, I generally expect to be hateful, bigoted people. It's not just people who feel like, well, maybe trans people shouldn't be competing in women's sports or whatever. It's not like that. It's not like a moderate position. They're radicals by definition. Trans exclusionary radical feminists. They're not cases. TERFs are. And I don't know if Chappelle knows what a TERF is, but again, he came out and said, I am a TERF. I identify as a TERF. He stopped the jokes, looked at the camera, said, now I'm not joking. This is serious. I am a TERF. That was what I had a problem with. His trans jokes, hilarious. His stuff about being a TERF, disturbing as it gets. Anyway, let's keep listening to Tim Pool.
If it's a black guy, it's a gang, and if it's a bunch of Jewish people, it's a coincidence. You're not allowed to talk about it.
That's what Chappelle said, yeah.
It's Dave Chappelle's joke. Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle's lives have not been destroyed. They've talked about it. They've addressed it. It's come up here. The thing about what Kanye said is, Kanye praised Hitler.
Yeah,
praised
okay,
Nazis.
Kanye's on a different level from
Kanye
everybody
said
else.
they're not allowed to control things, and he would only hire them if he can follow them home, put cameras in their house to prove they aren't spies. Okay, if you said that about any ethnic group, people are going to get mad at you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a new level.
Well, I mean, I think Kanye has just been an interesting example of bringing this conversation to the forefront. And again, too, it really was a test of freedom of speech, right? And who in the right wing, area really is truly pro-free speech, because granted, I don't agree with most of what Kanye said, probably all of what Kanye said. It was pretty crazy. But again, still support his right to say it. Same thing with Nick Fuentes.
Sure. And I support anybody else's right to boycott him, to not listen to his music, to say he's a monster, and I'm sick of it, and I don't want him anywhere near my platform. So, yeah, there you go. We are at an impasse. Kanye doesn't have a right to anybody's platform. If he wants to speak about Nazis being great, he can create his own. And I don't have to put him on my platform. He doesn't have, and he can continue saying what he wants. So yeah, what's the problem here?
Still support their right to say it. And I think that's the beauty of the free speech, right? Is you allow your opponent to say exactly what they think, or just anybody in society exactly what they think, and then society is allowed to dictate if they like it or not.
Well, you let the best idea win, and you have to counter bad ideas with good ideas. That's why I think we were trying to facilitate a conversation here to try to find out what the best idea was. And sadly, we didn't have that. But it would have been contentious. It would have been interesting. But I think it's worthwhile to challenge bad ideas. And I think we need to do this more routinely than a lot of other people do it.
We got a super chat that I want to address before we go to super chats, because someone just mentioned is an interesting point. They said, you're still not listening to Sav. She's asking why you can say collusion between white people. White person abuses people, but it's not okay to say Jewish person. So let me explain.
It's perfectly okay to say that, Jewish people are colluding together or whatever, if it's true. Is it true? If it's not true, you're being a racist piece of shit. It just so happens that it's not. There isn't a malicious group behind the scenes controlling things like puppet masters. It's not happening. You live in a fantasy land. And you're a racist piece of shit.
From where I come from, my point is, I've routinely ragged on the left for blaming white people. It will not be any different when someone wants to blame Jewish people. I do not like people looking at someone and being like, I've made a decision about you just because you look a certain way. That's nonsense to me. I don't think it's legitimate. Yeah. I knew this Haitian guy when I worked at O'Hare, and he was complaining how people call him African-American, but he's from Haiti. He's like, he's not from Africa. He's not American either. He's Haitian. Don't call me that. It's like this stupid,
Yeah, people call African American, or I'm sorry, people
judging
call
a person for this.
Yeah, people go to Africa and refer to the people there as African Americans. It is deeply ridiculous. I got to give him that.
I agree. The left, when they blame white people for everything, is ridiculous, and it's
That would be ridiculous if that was happening. The left is not blaming white people for everything, but okay.
wrong. I also think it's wrong when people like Kanye or anyone else blame Jewish people for it. I also think it's wrong when people blame black people for it. I'm like, let's blame criminals. Let's blame thieves. Let's blame corruption, and let's try to figure out how we live and work together, and we don't blame each other just because we look a certain way. Because I just, man,
The left is not doing that. That's not happening. The left is not blaming all white people for anything.
imagining just the idea of just racism in general. It really does make me angry.
Same, yeah.
Like judging someone in any capacity without actually knowing who they are and knowing what they believe is a problem.
It's wrong.
Because then what? You're going to be a person who likes white people? Okay, guess what? All the Antifa people, overwhelmingly white. So it's certainly not white people that are...
He doesn't know that. Antifa is not a group anyway. Antifa is not a group anyways. It's an ideology, if you will. It's the idea that you want to be anti-fascist. There isn't a group of people out there, again, that are maliciously pulling strings behind the scenes trying to cause problems for people or whatever.
Good or better. No, because Antifa's out of their minds. Then you've got...
Okay, Antifa is just a mindset that you want to break up fascist power structures. That's it. According to government officials, even the ones that were in power while Trump was the president. Antifa is not a group, it's a mindset.
Latinos, you've got people from Cuba who love America more than these white Antifa. Yeah. That's just me. That's just me. I'm just saying.
It just blows me away that he's like convinced that like there's this real group out there called Antifa that's like trying to destroy everything, and they're all white apparently. He knows that they're all white, even though he doesn't have statistics on this because they don't exist. Doesn't matter. They're all white in Tim Pool's mind, and they're all out to get him.
So they're self-hating white people, just like they're self-hating Jewish people.
You blame systems that breed these kinds of problems, like the Roman Empire is the white person problem is the Roman patriarchy. That thing created a church to get into people's minds. It tried to control the world. It's still trying to control the world through its church. Like that's the white person problem is the Roman patriarchy. That's a real thing.
What the hell is this guy talking about right now? This dude is a confusing mess.
Jewish problem is the banking cartels that were invented by M. Shel Rothschild in the 1500s. His three sons went off to England, Italy, and France to make the Rothschild banking empire. It's the banking superstructure that's the problem, not the race or the culture. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's the behavior.
And I think Jones...
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, okay? He mentioned Jews and banking. Let's talk about that for a second, okay? The top 10 banks in the world, of the top 10 banks, only one of them was founded and is currently run by Jewish people. So Goldman Sachs was founded by two Jewish guys, and the current CEO is a Jewish guy. Only one of 10, okay? There's another one. I don't remember which bank this is, but one of the top 10 banks was founded by a non-Jewish person and a Jewish person, two people together. And the current CEO, I believe, is Jewish. So of the top 10, only 2 Jewish CEOs and only 3 Jewish founders out of like 50 people that involved in this whole thing, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because New York City is, I think, 25% Jewish. And it is the epicenter, the heart of the financial system of the United States. So proportionally, we should see a lot more Jewish people involved in the banking industry if that were true. So this whole Jewish control of the banks myth is just that, a myth, completely made up. And it seems to me that it likely stems from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion document that I've referred to a few times now. This old document plagiarized by the Russian secret police in 1905 to demonize Jewish people. And that's about it. That's what it seems like to me.
He's actually made that point, and then Ye admitted he was wrong. He said he shouldn't have blanketed all people.
Well, let me step back a little bit. Listen again.
It's the banking superstructure that's the problem, not the race or the culture. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's the behavior.
And I think Jones actually made that point, and then Ye admitted he was wrong. He said he shouldn't have blanketed all people, and that it's actually about banking and stuff like that.
See, and that's the thing.
Okay, I don't remember that, actually, and I listened to the entire thing and took notes on all of it. It took me 3 hours. I don't remember that part.
With Kanye that's inconsistent with his interviews is I feel like when he does get that pushback, he's like, okay, well, he'll capitulate that point, you know?
We looked up the CEOs of banks because we're talking with Michael Malice, and it's like the CEOs of a bunch of these banks are just white dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all white dudes. Only like 2 of the top 10 are even Jewish. It's almost a non-existent problem. It's not a problem at all. It's almost a non-existent thing that he's describing, that Kanye is describing.
So I don't know, man.
From all over.
This is the problem I have. Mainly it's because I want to solve these problems. Why is the Federal Reserve ripping people off and destroying everything? Well, if you come out and just scream that someone's like religious background or ethnic background, I'm like, bro, that's not the problem. Is the system, and it's being supported by a whole bunch of people of all different backgrounds.
Yeah, how are you going to solve anything by saying, specifically, focusing on some of the outer details rather than the actual core issues of the problem and the effects of it?
It's like this. It's like a homeless white man has privilege and Oprah Winfrey is disadvantaged. Yeah, sorry, dude, I'm not.
Nobody has ever made that claim. Nobody has ever said that like homeless people are more privileged than Oprah Winfrey. Nobody. In fact, I would say Kanye is more privileged than anybody else in society, despite the fact that he's a black guy. He is more privileged than anybody else.
Not buying that. When they come out and they say white people, this is white heteronormative patriarchy, I'm like, shut up, dude.
In New York City,
Dude, what? Who is saying this stuff, and what do they mean when they say that? This is like a non-existent thing that Tim Pool is describing here.
they implemented resources in the official school board there that made sure this is at the head of the Department of Education in New York City, that if you're a white student that's poor, resources shouldn't be going to you. They should be going to a rich black person.
Okay, I'm in the New York City school system. What is he talking about? I have not heard a word about this.
Black kid, mainly because of the institutionalized racism inside of that school or structure. That's the policies that are being implemented right now that are absolutely insane, that need to be pushed back on.
Where did he get this? Is this even real? I haven't heard a word about this.
And are racist.
For the record, when it comes up again, Semite is more than just an Arab, or more than just a Jew. It's an Arab. It's Phoenician, Akkadian. It's all those people from that Southwestern Asian peninsula or.
Oh, here we go. Okay, fantastic. This dude is unhinged, first of all. Second, okay, sure, maybe that's true. Maybe that's the original root of the word Semite, but we use it in a colloquial way nowadays. We have a very specific meaning that we apply to it now that does not necessarily apply to Arabs. So, yeah.
Area, not really peninsula. Those are all Semites. So if you hated Muslims during 2005, you were an anti-Semite, buddy.
No, nobody used it that way. This is completely made up.
If you have anti-Muslim in you, you're an anti-Semite. I don't like that they act like it's only Jewish. It's like there's a lot of people, the Semitic people were.
That is who we are talking about when we talk about anti-Semitism. Oh my God, these people.
A lot of different people.
Right. It's just another word for racism, essentially. That's what the ethnic and religious thing I think may have been getting confused for you there.
But it should be very clear when you use that word what it means. It does not mean Jewish person.
There's
Yes, it does. Colloquially, it does mean Jewish person, anti-Jewish person. Since World War II, that's what it has meant colloquially. Technically, does the etymology mean something different? Maybe. We're talking about anti-Jew hate. Oh my God, these people.
There's tough challenges in this space. I think everybody gets it. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. 47th Street was just north of us. When you crossed it, the entire community was black. There was an area they called the LeClaire Courts. When people from when black people from north of 47th would come down south of 47th, and then there was this thing where a bunch of young girls would rob young girls south of 47th, and it was always a racial disparity. You'd see a lot of that. The cops wouldn't let you go north of 47th, and I'm like, look, man, I'm not stupid enough to think that this is the problem of someone's race. It's a problem of two distinct communities that don't see each other, and it may be a component of race. That's why they don't view each other as like part of the same community. But a lot of it was constructed. A lot of the project housing, the redlining, the blockbusting created this element. So when you go into areas where it's like mixed, everybody's getting along. Right. So I think what happens is a lot of people see something like that. They see these barrier streets. In New York, I lived in Crown Heights, and there was a split between the Jewish neighborhood and the black neighborhood, and they had shootouts because they were rival drug dealers. Right. A lot of people thought it was like a race war or an ethnic thing. And then I learned from the people actually involved, they were like, no, it's just because they're trying to sell drugs over here. Right. And so why is it that it was tended to be black people fighting against Jewish people was not the race. It was that if you lived in this area, the dealers you were working with, it was a Jewish neighborhood. If you lived in this area, the dealers you're working with, it was in a black neighborhood.
Okay. Oh my God. And he's saying it's not about race. This guy is so disconnected from everything. How does he get breakfast in the morning? This dude is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't know the situation that he's like detailing for us here. Maybe I'm missing context. Maybe I'm missing information to these stories or whatever. Just based on what he's told me so far, it sounds like a race issue. Honestly, how does he get breakfast for himself in the morning?
This is like a deep problem in cities with racial segregation. And there's a lot of components to it that I think are real, notably that people choose to live in areas where people look like each other. That is what, creates racism. Or as a component of it. Me personally, I'm going to try to avoid stereotyping someone based on experiences like that and let someone be an individual so they can be as worthy as they choose to be.
Yeah,
right?
man, there's groups and cabals and gangs are real. They're real. People can get together. And sometimes, you get with what you know. A lot of times that's the easiest thing.
Sure, there are groups of people out there who are trying to survive in one way or another, and some of them are doing it in a destructive way, a way that's destructive to society. But when you say cabal, it has a very distinct, specific meaning. It refers to a group of Jewish elites. The word cabal does specifically, remember, its origins come from the word Kabbalah, which is a Jewish tradition. When you talk about a cabal, you're talking about Jewish elites that are getting together and maliciously planning and carrying out malicious plans to destroy society in some way or give themselves an edge in some way. That's what is meant by the term cabal, very specifically. It's not just gangs of people or mafias or whatever. That's what Kanye is referring to. A cabal of Jewish people who are setting out to maliciously hurt others and benefit themselves.
Path of least resistance. If you speak the same language, I don't know if they look like you, maybe it's easier to identify. But just because groups are real doesn't mean that people aren't individuals. When you see their eyeballs, you realize the skin suit is almost irrelevant. The brain stem creature is like what we really are, floating in these meat sacks, pulling on electrodes, getting our bodies to move around. But you see the humanity in their eyes, man. You get right through that. I thought racism was gone in 2008. For there was a brief moment of a year where...
Then you were a fucking moron if you really believed that. If you really thought racism was gone in 2008, you had no idea what was going on around you.
Everyone was the same. And I use that word hyperbolically because I know we have genetic differences, but we're so similar. Mm-hmm. So freaking similar.
In-group, out-group situation.
I'll tell you this. We look at that poll, that data that shows that white liberals are the only group with an out-group preference. That shows that among black people, Asian people, Latino, they have an in-group racial preference.
What is he talking about here? Is he going to provide the evidence for us, or is he just going to make this shit up?
They are slightly more inclined to want to be around people who are of the same ethnic background or race. White conservatives, same thing. It's slight. It's not definitive. Liberals, the only with a negative. They don't like being around white people.
That's interesting.
Is he going to give us a link to this study? I'm sorry, I just don't believe a word out of Tim's mouth, and I don't accept the implications that he derived from this or whatever.
Yeah, so I think Tucker Carlson hit the nail on the head with a hammer when he said he's like, I'm not racist. It's white liberal women. They're the ones who are voting for all these policies and doing all these things.
I was a white liberal.
Oh, he got it from Tucker. That's why he's not providing a source for us. Yeah, Tucker is a propagandist, plain and simple. Don't believe a word out of his mouth.
I'm like, is that racist and sexist, though? Because you're calling out white women?
I didn't like being around only people. I was born in Cuyahoga Falls.
Dude, these people are obsessed with race. Obsessed with it.
They call it Caucasian Falls because it was like 99.9% white people, and I was disgusting. Like until I was 18, it was like racist, and I left, went to New York City, Chicago, LA. I just wanted to be around different cultures. That was the white liberal in me. I couldn't stand just being isolated in this one monoculture.
Why was it disgusting?
Because I knew there was more. I knew that racism wasn't right. It didn't sound right. I knew that
How was it racist if it was like overwhelmingly white?
Dude, this is just, God, their view of the world, of society, is fucking weird and disturbing and odd, and I just don't understand. How did they get to the point where they view things this way? It's fucking weird.
They would make racist jokes about other people, other races and stuff, and it was just like,
okay.
if you were like, no, that's not good, then you get ostracized by the group of racists. And so I'm forced, like as a little kid, I don't want to say they're all racist, but I think there's just inherent racism in all of us from that environment, where it's like that was normal.
No, there is not inherent racism in all of us. Racism and prejudice are learned. They are not. You're not born with this. Prejudice and hatred are learned. They are learned traits. Just like you don't have a prejudice or a hatred or a distrust for people who have blue eyes or green eyes or brown hair, you are not born with a prejudice against people who have darker skin. That is learned. So psychologically speaking, according to psychological literature, according to psychology literature, prejudice is learned. You are not born with it. It is not inherent. Thus proving this guy has no fucking clue what he's talking about. Not even the basics.
And our parents had come from racist environments. I had to get out of it. I had to see the world. Then I went to South America, and man, that's like the other end of the spectrum where I was the odd man out, and that was a very lonely experience too. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I advise everyone get a chance to dip into another culture. I live down on Normal Avenue in LA, and it's every Sunday.
What does that mean?
It's like the Latino, man, they're getting wild on Sunday, you know? They got the food carts going and dancing and playing music at church.
We used to have the elotes carts on the south side by Vinham Park, where I used to hang out, and then the mayor banned them.
Yeah.
They were only allowed on the other side of Cicero, where all the billboards.
Oh, and Tim is going to find some way to turn this into like something that was racist, right? Seriously, I do not think about race this much. If you think about race this much, you've got problems. Deep problems.
Turned Spanish. That was deeply offensive to me because it was the most fun thing when the elotes cart pulled up. You had $1, and he shaved the corn into the cup with some mayo, some Parmesan, some cayenne pepper.
Dude, did this freeze? What is going on with this right now? Oh my God, dude. My computer froze. This is so frustrating. Okay, this happens every now and then. I'm just going to switch over to the game for a minute. Give it a couple of minutes to reload because my computer, it's been locking up for one reason or another. I don't know why. Anyways, yeah. Dude, Tim is seemingly obsessed with race to like a weird degree. Like nobody should be thinking about race this much, honestly. Nobody should be this obsessed with race. Nobody. And it's not just Tim. It's like everybody on the right, seemingly. Like they have this weird obsession with being persecuted and with the idea that like the white race is being held back or whatever. It's just odd. And like I said before, this obsession with race, this hatred, this prejudice, all of this stuff, this is learned behavior. It is not innate. You're not born distrusting people like this. Just like you don't distrust people with blue eyes inherently. You don't even pay attention to it. You're not born hating anybody. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We're almost done with Tim Pool, so let's keep listening.
Vinham Park, where I used to hang out, and then the mayor banned them.
Yeah.
They were only allowed on the other side of Cicero, where all the billboards turned Spanish. That was deeply offensive to me because it was the most fun thing when the elotes cart pulled up. You had $1, and he shaved
What a snowflake. He's offended by such a thing?
the corn into the cup with some mayo, some Parmesan, some cayenne pepper, stir it up, hand it to you. Yeah, a cup of corn. And then we don't know why, but there was like a rule put in place banning them from the west side of Cicero Avenue. Yeah. And that just happens to be like a dividing line where you start seeing more Hispanic and Spanish billboards. And we were like, yo, what the man? Yeah. We love.
Is Tim Pool telling us that he doesn't know why, but he believes that this was a racist thing that was done, a racist policy put in place? Just a hunch, a guess. He has no evidence to assume it, but he sees racial prejudice in everything? Is that what he's saying? That's what it sounds like to me, actually. Like, this guy's constantly talking about how he doesn't like identity politics. Actually, he says he doesn't like identitarianism, which is a totally different thing that's unrelated, but he says he doesn't like identity politics, and then he engages in it actively, constantly. Is this guy ever going to get over himself? This dude drives me nuts.
I love the elotes guy. He was cool. Yeah, and tamales. He had tamales, too.
It was so great to just witness the humanity and people of other. It's not race. It's not the word race isn't the right word. What's the word? What's the difference between like someone from Africa and someone from Ireland?
Culture, I guess.
Different cultures?
Different cultures.
But if we're both born in the United States and we grew up across the street from each other, then what's the difference? What would you...
There is no difference. Fundamentally, there is no difference between the two. Seriously, I really want you to think about this for a minute. People believe that there's a difference because they were raised to believe that. There is no difference. Race isn't real. I'm telling you, race is not real. Really think about this. Race is fake. It was fabricated as a way to hate other people.
I would still say it's more of a culture thing, though, right?
Yeah.
But you said you felt isolated
in South America. That was interesting because I had the lightest skin, long hair. They would call me Thor from the movie because they were like, hey, this guy. And when I walk on the street, people would be staring at me and looking at me. And it was like, I didn't speak their language very well. It was a very weird experience. I have a lot more empathy towards people that might identify an out group now.
Yo, I went to Thailand during Chinese New Year.
Where'd you go?
Bangkok.
Oh, cool.
And I can't remember exactly where we were, but it was this like big market avenue that went really far, and it was just crowded, shoulder to shoulder with people.
Culture does exist. Yeah, there are different cultures. Somebody, Haunted Shadows Legacy says race is fabricated, but culture exists. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right on that point. And being on the outside of a culture does make you a little bit of an outsider. It just feels different. People, you can't relate to people as easily and things like that. So there are differences in culture. But race is fake.
I could see over everyone's head. It was just, and like the person I was with, we were both like on average taller than everyone. And I was like, wow, like we're in this country. Everyone here is Thai. I'm like a foot taller than everybody. I'm like, or like, half a foot taller than everybody. Then I went to Sweden and I was just like looking up at everybody like, this is very interesting. Yeah, everybody was taller than me.
A good conversation to have is the conversation about genetics and the difference of genetics. They call it race realism sometimes. But I think.
Yeah, race realism is, from my understanding, okay. Someone can correct me in the comment if I'm wrong about this, but from my understanding, I believe that there are, this is factual, what I'm about to say. The black community is overrepresented in crime statistics, right? That could be caused by one of two things. Either it's an environmental issue, completely unrelated to race, or completely unrelated to genetics. This is just what happens when you put somebody in an environment where they struggle, where they're part of an outgroup, they're mistreated, and they have worse schools and things like that. This happens. It's an environmental thing, or it's a genetic thing. They are genetically inferior. It can be one of those two things, right? Obviously, it's an environmental thing. There is absolutely no science to imply the idea that any race is inferior in any way to any of the others genetically. There's no science to back that up. It's just fabricated. That's race realism. The idea that there are genetically inferior races out there. And like I said, there's no evidence to back it up. So I don't know what he's talking about here about race realism, believing that blah, 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 blah. I don't have any idea what he's talking about, but it sounds completely wrong to me.
Then I went to Sweden and I was just like looking up at everybody like, this is very interesting. Yeah, everybody was taller than me.
A good conversation to have is the conversation about genetics and the difference of genetics. They call it race realism sometimes. But I think that's an important free speech conversation to objectively identify differentials in genetics, but also acknowledge.
If there were real differences genetically between people, then sure, I suppose. There aren't. The only real genetic difference is in the amount of melanin. Our genetics produce a higher amount of melanin if we're from certain areas of the world rather than others. That's it. That's the only difference. Race realism claims that people are genetically inferior. They are more predisposed to violence or whatever. That's race realism. And there is no reason to entertain that conversation because there is no evidence to back it up, and it's deeply inherently racist. That concept is.
The similarity in our consciousness and our brains and our spines and stuff like that. But you got to be able to, with love, acknowledge the differences.
Tim, were you talking about Chatuchak?
What is it?
Just like that big, it's a famous market.
With love, acknowledge what differences? What differences is he talking about here?
Acknowledge the similarity in our consciousness and our brains and our spines and stuff like that. But you got to be able to, with love, acknowledge the differences.
Tim, were you talking about Chatuchak?
What is it?
Just like that big, it's a famous market in Bangkok. I'd like to check out the name.
I don't know. I went to this mall that was insanely huge, though, in Bangkok, where they were like, it was one of the biggest malls in the world or something that.
Yeah. That's
wow. I can't believe that he's got a race realist sitting on his panel or whatever here. That's insane.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Also, before we're going to go to Super Chats, but I want to give a shout out to Roberto Jr., our rooster, because there's just something hilarious about when they're like a foot and a half tall, but when you walk in there, Roberto Jr. turns his head up to look you in the eyes. And I just think it's funny because I'm like, he doesn't need to see my face. Like, what, I don't know. It's just funny. Like, he can see you and see what you're doing, but he wants to.
These people are so obsessed with race, it's ridiculous. They really need to get over this because it is like an unhealthy obsession, in my opinion. Anyway, let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you want to see more stuff from like Tim Pool or Steven Crowder or any of these other far-right, nutbags, if you will. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. And thanks for watching.